All right, boys and girls. So today for our poetry reading and writing, we're going to be studying the poetry technique of onomatopoeia. So I want everybody to have their notebook or journal with them ready to be used as we go through this lesson. So what is onomatopoeia? I'm sure some of you or most of you already learned a little bit about onomatopoeia in third grade. But as a refresher, onomatopoeia is a fun way of using words that sound like actions they describe. It's an imitation of the sounds in word form. So sounds like bam and ouch, splat and bang. That's all onomatopoeia because they're describing the action in which is happening. Some of you might remember an old version of Batman and Robin where they used to show the little blurb in the corner, bam, boom, things like that. That's all onomatopoeia. So adding onomatopoeia to poetry, if your poem contains actions, it's a really good idea to include onomatopoeia in your writing. An example of this is, say you're writing a poem about skiing. Let's just say you started with this line, skiing down the snowy hill. This describes what you're doing, and the reader can obviously visualize you skiing down this hill. However, you might also say something like, instead of just skiing down the snowy hill, you might say swooshing down the snowy hill. Swooshing, taking place of the word skiing, is the use of onomatopoeia. All right, I want you to try this. In your writer's notebook or in the notebook or journal that you're using at home, I want you to try to revise these lines in a poem, but using onomatopoeia instead. So the lines are, the waves are moving fast towards the shore. The sand is hot beneath my feet. I want you to try to rewrite this in your notebook quickly using onomatopoeia. Replace any words that you feel are appropriate where you can use onomatopoeia. I'll give you about 30 seconds. Be creative, obviously. All right. So you might have done something different, which is awesome. Here's a little suggestion that something I would have done. I would have said, the waves are racing towards the shore, booming, crashing. The sand is sizzling between my feet. Notice that I'm not only thinking about words that will take place of actions, but I'm also thinking about words that would be appropriate to the setting in which I'm writing a poem about. So if I'm writing a poem about waves, of course I'm thinking to myself, well, what do waves do? They crash and they boom. When I'm standing on hot sand, what's happening? Oh, my feet are sizzling. So let's take a look at how we can analyze a poem to show its meaning. We're going to read a poem titled The Rusty Spigot. And the things I want you to think about as we're reading is, what is the poem describing? And how can you use onomatopoeia to help you understand what the poem is really about? Remember, poetry and writers of poetry, they always have a craft. There's always a deeper purpose to what they're writing about. And let's see if we can figure it out. The rusty spigot sputters, utters, a splutter, spatters, a smattering of drops, gashes wider, slash, splatters, scatters, spurts, finally stops sputtering, and plash, gushes, rushes, splashes, clear water dashes. So what is this poem describing using onomatopoeia? Well, I know from the first line, the rusty spigot, that a spigot is like a faucet at the end of a garden hose. Rusty means that it's old. So there are describing words that imitate sounds like splatter and scatter and sputter and spurts. And this sounds like when you first turn on a garden hose, the water doesn't always come right away, right? You have to wait for it to kind of get from the spigot to the end of the hose, and it makes that weird sputtering noise, and you're just kind of waiting. The describing sounds start to change, don't they? As we get through the poem, they change from spattering and scattering and sputtering to gushing and rushing and splashing. Gushes, rushes, splashes, all more words that we heard. In the end, the water finally comes out in an even flow, and verbatim, the words from the end of the poem were clear water dashes. So in your notebook today, what I want you to do is I want you to write as many poems as you can using the onomatopoeia technique. Don't just write 1 or 2 poems. I'm not going to give you a number. I want you to write as many as you can. Today's another day for long and strong poetry writing. After you've written a bunch of onomatopoeia poems, you can choose 1 poem to post to Mr. DiRienzo's Poetry Paradise Padlet, and then I will approve it. I can't wait to read them.